All right, so I am Erin Fehr. My pronouns are she, her, and I am going to be presenting to you today all about transferring into UBC Engineering. So thanks for your patience as I sorted some technical difficulties. I also have a current student with me today. So what is going to happen is that we are going to present a little bit first, just to kind of give you all of the details. Some of your questions might be answered through this presentation. And then I'll bring Ash on screen to answer some questions and talk about their experience of transferring into UBC Engineering as well. All right, so you can use the Q&A to ask your questions. Some of your questions may get answered as I go through this quick presentation, but I just wanted to make sure that you kind of know where everything is. All right. So if you've watched some of our other presentations, you already know that we have two campuses for UBC Engineering. The difference is primarily locations. We have the Okanagan campus located in Kelowna, and we have the Vancouver campus as well. The other main difference will be the programs that are offered at those locations. So we have 4 programs available at the Okanagan campus, and then we also have 14 different programs available at the Vancouver campus. So if you haven't had a chance yet, in the left-hand navigation of the expo, there is a place where you can navigate through all of the booths about all of our different programs. So that's a great resource to kind of access. But otherwise, definitely exploring the websites of those programs to see which program you may be interested in so that you can do some of that exploration before you come to UBC Engineering. All right, so getting into more for the admission piece for transfer students. We definitely do have transfer students apply every year, and there's a few different kind of routes to do so that we'll talk about today. So the first important piece is the application deadline, which is the final deadline to apply January 15th every year. So if you're planning to start next September, make sure that you're applying by January 15th of 2023 in order to start in September 2023. Now, the deadline to be considered based on your intern transcript is December 1st. So what that means is that you can be offered an earlier offer of admission if you're applying sooner, so before December 1st, and then you're actually providing your transcript from your first term to be considered for that. So we do recommend applying by December 1st because even if you're not admitted based on that interim transcript, you'll still be considered with everyone that applies by January 15th. So you may as well get it out of the way before you have any upcoming exams and just get it done with. It's a pretty simple application process that we'll talk a little bit more about right now. So how do you actually start your application? If you go to yu.ubc.ca, on any of those pages, you can click on Apply to UBC. And that is going to take you eventually to the Education Planner BC site. So this is where most of our students apply. Current students, if you are a current student at UBC planning to transfer from another faculty to engineering, you'll go through your SSC. Otherwise, if you are applying and currently at a different institution, you'll go through the Education Planner BC. In there, you'll create your common applicant profile, which is pretty simple, just answering questions about your name and where you're currently studying and all of that sort of information. And then once you submit all of that, you'll click Start Applying, and that's when you'll be able to select that you're applying to UBC. So at UBC, you would be applying to the Bachelor of Applied Science Engineering because you're actually applying to the degree, not to a particular program. And so you can choose the Okanagan campus or the Vancouver campus or put both. So you have 2 choices on your application, a first choice and a second choice. Now note that your first choice is always going to be considered first, and if you're admissible, then admissions will usually stop there. So your second choice should kind of be your backup option or wherever you may want to study if you are not admissible to your first choice. So this could be applying to engineering at both campuses. This could be applying to a different program at the same campus as your first choice as well. So you have lots of options with that. Now, the next step is to check your email. So once you apply, you're actually not providing that much in terms of like your current grades or anything like that. You're just providing a whole bunch of information about yourself. UBC is going to review that information, and then they're going to send you an email, and they're going to tell you what documents you need to submit and when you need to submit those documents. Typically, we'll ask for the official transcripts from your current institution. We'll likely also ask for any transcripts from any previous post-secondary institutions. And then if necessary, we may also request transcripts from your high school as well. So there are two main entry routes for transfer students. We have the engineering transfer program, which you would complete within 1 year, so September through April, so you need to complete all of those courses. And then as long as you have the minimum GPA, so Vancouver, we're looking for a 3.1, and at the Okanagan campus, we're looking for a 2.8. If you have those two conditions met, then you can be admitted directly into our second year program. The other main option for transfer students is the post-secondary transfer route. And so that is a competitive admission route where we're going to look at the GPA on your last 30 credits. We're going to look at your math, chemistry, and physics course averages from all of your post-secondary history. And unfortunately, there's no set GPA for you because it will be competitive depending on who's applying that year, the strength of those applicants, and things like that. So it is a competitive process, and you do want to make sure that you're following kind of a few specific things that we'll talk about a little bit more. And there's also our bridging program. So we have bridging options. If you've completed a technical diploma at another institution, you can do a bridging program for Vancouver or Okanagan through Camosun, or you can do a bridging program through Okanagan College to enter UBC Okanagan. So there's a couple options for that. I've linked them below the screen. So if you just scroll down a little bit, you'll see information about that and some of those links to follow to see all of that information, as well as links to see all of the engineering transfer program partner institutions that we offer. All right. So a couple of things to know, especially if you're applying through that competitive process, where we're going to look at how many of our courses you have completed. So you need to have completed at least 27 credits from UBC Engineering's first year program in order to be eligible for second year. Now, if you're doing the engineering transfer program, that first option that I mentioned, where you have to complete all of those courses anyways, you'll be meeting this requirement, no problem. If you're coming through the competitive route, though, you'll want to make sure that your courses transfer to UBC Engineering's first year program courses. And that's where sometimes it may be a little bit different. So you may have taken several chemistry courses, but because there's only one chemistry course as part of our first year program, you'll only have credit counted towards that in this 27 credits that we're counting for. It doesn't mean that it'll affect your transfer credit overall, but it means that towards the degree, you'll only have met that transfer credit for that one program, which is what we're counting for that year level progression. So if you're being admitted with less than 27 credits from our first year program, it just means that you'll be considered eligible for first year. It means that you'll likely start in what we call a modified first year schedule to complete any of those courses that you may be deficient in first year. But then you can also take some of those common second year courses like stats and some of your math courses and things like that. So there's still courses that you would do, but it does mean that you probably have a full 4 years ahead of you if you're entering that first year. Just as a snapshot of what those courses are that I'm talking about at the Vancouver campus, this is the full list of our first year courses. So you'd be looking for your courses that would transfer as these courses. You'll see the first year requirement is a total of 37 credits. And like I said, we're looking for a minimum of 27 credits that transfers as these courses in order to be considered for second year. Now, at the Okanagan campus, you'll see it's a very similar list of courses. They have a different naming scheme, so the courses are named a little bit different. But we're looking for at least 27 credits of that first year requirements. All right. So admissions is one piece. If you're admitted to second year or if you're admitted to first year, then that's great. Our first year is considered a foundational first year. Again, if you're admitted to first year as a transfer student, you're probably going to be doing what we call a modified first year and just making up any of those deficient courses, maybe taking some of those second year courses as well. If you're admitted to second year, then you'll need to do what we call placement. So placement is separate from admissions. Admissions is kind of that first step to get into the Bachelor of Applied Science. And then placement is how you get into your program itself. So at the Okanagan campus, Placement is not competitive. So any of those 4 programs that I listed, you get to choose which one you want to continue into, and you would go into that program in your second year. At the Vancouver campus, it's a little bit more complicated because we do have what we call a competitive placement process. So that's our second year placement. And it's a little bit complicated because you have to rank programs and things like that. And that's what I'm going to go through kind of right now. We have the placement form usually live from about mid-March or so until about mid-May. So you'd want to make sure that in the spring, before you're coming to UBC at the Vancouver campus, that you're filling out that placement form. Now, even though admissions is that first step, you don't necessarily need to be admitted yet to start your placement form. So you should plan to fill out a placement form if you're currently in an engineering transfer program and knowing that you're going to be completing all of those courses. Or if you're coming in and you know that you should have at least 27 credits of our first year program, you think that you're going to be admitted to year 2. If either of those apply to you, you can start the second year placement process without having needed to actually be admitted just yet. Even though I do want to clarify, admissions is a separate process. All right, so the placement form, when you get to that piece, so again, that'll be spring before you're coming to UBC Engineering at the Vancouver campus. You'll rank all of the programs that we offer, so 1 through 14. You'll write a personal statement, which is about 500 words towards your first choice program, that they will read that, and that can actually help boost you up a little bit. And usually the deadline is May 15th, but again, in spring when it opens, you can check out the website. I have the second year placement website linked below as well, so you can check that out to make sure that you know all of those dates. Now, each of our programs at the Vancouver campus tends to have students enter those programs with different GPAs. So again, it is a ranking process. We are looking at students' first year GPA or your admission GPA if you're coming to us as a transfer student. So here is a rough breakdown. This is a 4-year average. And so what you can see is those circles are that 50% of students entering those programs at the Vancouver campus had a GPA above that point. And so this is, again, a 4-year historical average. This is not a cutoff. This simply just shows where you can expect that you'll need to be in order to get into these programs, but they can fluctuate year to year, and they do fluctuate year to year. So this is by no means any sort of specific cutoff to use, but just a framework to guide you. Now, the other important part is that if you are coming into year 2 and you're admitted to year 2, you will be placed into a program. So you don't have to worry about not being placed, but in terms of what program you're placed into will be based on your ranking and what your admission average is. All right, so before I wrap up with some of my kind of technical explanation, I do want to mention some deadlines that are important to consider coming up. Now, we do have our on-campus events, and these are a great way if you live in the Lower Mainland or if you live in the Okanagan and you want to talk more with each of our engineering programs, that's a great way to do so. So the Vancouver campus is coming up on November 5th, and the Okanagan campus is coming up on November 19th. The application deadline to be considered on your interim transcripts is December 1st. So again, I recommend applying by then, just so you can get it out of the way, get it over with, get it done with. And then if you don't apply by that deadline, though, do make sure that you're meeting that January 15th deadline. Again, there's a few other pieces in here for you to kind of check out and get a sense of when those sorts of things happen. What I will also mention is that most of our admission decisions for transfer students are made throughout May and June. So it does happen a little bit later than you may expect, and you may be applying right now, but not hearing back for several months. And I just want to let you know that that doesn't mean that UBC has forgotten about your application or anything like that. It just has to do with when we're able to view those transcripts and assess you. All right, so that's it for me. So thank you so much for watching this presentation. We're going to jump into some of your questions as well. But before we do that, I want to bring Ash onto the screen. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Perfect. So Ash, welcome. Why don't you introduce yourself, what your program is, and a little bit about your journey to UBC so far.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Ash. I am a third-year civil engineering student. I transferred from Okanagan College. I graduated Okanagan College in December 2018. So I was an international student then. And so I did my 2-year program there. I worked for a few years. And once I got my permanent residency, I decided to come back to university. And I started UBCO this January.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So if anyone has any questions for myself or for Ash to talk about their experience, then please ask those in the Q&A. I know that there's some questions that already kind of came in. Ash, before we get to those, I have one more question for you. So a lot of students that I talk to are worried about how will you find your community or how will you make friends as a transfer student, like coming into a new program. So how did you find that process?
Honestly, it was a little bit difficult because by the time you get into your classes, people already have groups. The one thing that we did was we made a group chat of our transfer students. The whole civil engineering class, we have a group chat, and we do tend to rely on each other a little bit more because our classes are similar, our experiences are similar. A lot of times, because we're having to take some first-year courses, some second-year courses, our schedules don't align with the non-transfer students that much. So definitely, get to know your class that's coming and transferring. And then honestly, just talk to people. I found that a lot of people face that issue where they don't know anyone, where they have trouble finding friends. Just honestly, just talk to people. More people are willing to be friends with you than you think, honestly.
Awesome. Great advice. The other thing I hear from students is at the Vancouver campus is that, we have a large first year program. So we have about 1,000 students in our first year program. And there's about half of that or a little under half of that at the Okanagan campus. So it is a little bit easier to kind of meet everyone in first year at the Okanagan campus. But at the Vancouver campus, that's a lot of people to know. And so a lot of people even going from first year into second year are like meeting new people all of a sudden in their program because now you're in your program courses and things like that. So what I hear from students is definitely like to not be worried about that because everyone's also still meeting new people. And, we just had the student experience panel, if anyone was watching that, but getting involved in clubs, getting involved in the undergraduate societies, like those are all great ways to find your community and meet other people. So thanks for sharing, Ash. All right, so let's jump into the questions to get through a few questions before we are done today. So the first question, again, you can upvote questions. I'll go through the most popular ones and try to do as many of the questions as we can. But if you were admitted to UBC by choosing the Bachelor of Arts faculty, would you be able to transfer to engineering in your second year? So definitely possible. It would be the same as that post-secondary transfer route. So we're looking for those courses that you've completed in first year. How many of them apply to UBC Engineering's program at whichever campus you're applying to, and then looking at that to see if you're eligible for year 1 or year 2. So it would be the same sort of process as if you were applying from another institution as well. Again, we do have those engineering transfer programs, and that's really probably the most straightforward way to transfer into UBC Engineering because it's giving you the full first year program. And, as long as you're meeting that GPA, that you'll be eligible for second year. So if you're thinking of your backup options of what will be my backup option in the future, definitely consider applying to one of those engineering transfer programs at one of our 9 partner institutions, which again is linked to below as well. The next question is, for a transfer application, does the application only contain GPA or does it also have a personal profile component? So when you're applying, whatever it asks you in the application is what you will write in there. For transfer students, it likely will not ask for any sort of personal profile component. But again, it depends on how much post-secondary you've done. If we're still looking at your high school, if you've only done a couple post-secondary courses, you may kind of be considered somewhere in the middle. So whatever the application asks you for is what you will provide. But typically we're looking at just those grades for admission purposes. All right. Can I still have a chance to get into UBC Engineering after you were accepted from high school but decided not to come, then finished a 2-year engineering diploma from a college, and then can you get accepted from UBC again? So in this option, if you're doing the engineering, if you're doing a technical diploma, I would definitely recommend the either Camosun Bridging Program or the Okanagan College Bridging Program, if those programs are applicable to you, because that will take the technical degree that you've done. You'll do 1 year in that bridge and then come into third year, actually. But if you've done an engineering diploma, some schools will basically kind of space out the first year program into 2 years. And if that's the case, then you'd be applying in as a competitive transfer student. But yes, you can still apply and you may still be admissible. It just depends on your grades, what you've done, and kind of your academic history. So it's hard to give an exact answer, but definitely we encourage you to apply, and we'd love to have you apply and potentially join UBC Engineering. Can a year 3 student from a U.S. university transfer to year 2 engineering department of UBC? Possibly. It depends on if you've met those requirements. So again, we're looking for 27 credits that transfers to UBC Engineering at whichever campus you're applying to. So that's really what it depends on of if you'll be admissible to year 2. So it's possible. It just depends on what courses you've taken, what program you've taken in university, so that you can kind of determine where you will be admissible to and what year level that will be. But again, you don't really have to worry too much about that, because in the application process, we will do all of that assessment stuff for you. So Ash, if you think back to your application, do you remember any of that? Do you remember, was it difficult to figure out, or kind of like how that process was for you when you were actually applying?
It wasn't that hard. We were given very specific instructions every step of the way. And the UBCO team is very responsive. So if anytime I was confused, I just sent them an email. I usually received a response within a couple hours. I think the longest they took was maybe a day. It's not difficult. And I'm not sure if we're doing that right this time, but last time we were given a physical sheet of all of the steps and everything to do. And that was very helpful. And we also receive constant emails, the transfer students do, about exactly what to do in the upcoming semester, every semester. So it's very straightforward.
Yes, awesome. So there's not necessarily a specific sheet in terms of how to apply, but definitely when it comes to registering for your courses and things like that, we will give you that information. But especially with the new Education Planner BC application, which just started last year, but that one is very easy to follow and very straightforward. So you're just answering the questions as it's asked. You're just, it says, have you completed any other post-secondary? You would say yes if you're transferring in. You would give them the information about kind of what you've done before. The next question, is it much harder getting into UBC second year doing a 2-year diploma compared to doing a 1-year engineering program? So again, it depends on the school that you're going to. It depends on what you're doing. The difference between that engineering transfer program 1-year kind of entry route is that, as long as you have a 3.1 GPA for the Vancouver campus or 2.8 GPA for the Okanagan campus, that you're going to be admitted to that second year program as long as you complete all of those courses in first year. The difference is if you're doing a 2-year diploma, that's not a technical diploma. If you're doing a 2-year diploma, that's just kind of spreading out those courses. You're just being admitted through a competitive route. So it's not necessarily going to always be much more competitive than the engineering transfer program route, but it's just a matter of you won't know that, because we don't know that until we look at all of the students that have applied in that year, because it's based on that current applicant pool. So it may be better peace of mind for you if you're doing the engineering transfer program, because you know what you need to meet, but you can still be admitted. And again, that technical, if you're doing a technical diploma, that's a little bit of a different route, because you'd want to consider that bridging program that would actually admit you to third year at UBC. Again, those links are all listed below, so you can see our transfer student website for both campuses, as well as the list of our transfer programs as well. All right, so Ash, the next question is, as a transfer student, am I eligible for first year at UBC housing on campus? So for the on-campus housing guarantee at the UBC Vancouver or the Okanagan campus that is specifically for students entering first year from high school. So that guarantee may not apply to you. However, Ash, do you want to talk about kind of what you've done for housing? Have you lived in residence? Did you find off-campus housing, and kind of maybe what that was like for you?
Yeah, I've never lived in residence. I've just been off campus. I live downtown currently with my partner, and so I honestly never even considered living on residence, and so I'm very unfamiliar with that process. I've always just lived off campus.
How was it, though, finding a place off campus? Like, what sort of tools did you maybe use to find a place?
I've been renting in Kelowna for about 7-ish years.
Okay.
It can get difficult sometimes. I would recommend if you are, let's say, moving to Kelowna just for school in September, maybe try looking for something in August, because that's how I found my current place. It was in August, and rent prices also fluctuate. So in September, you'll find that the rent prices are the highest. So if possible, maybe move to Kelowna a month or maybe 2 months in advance. So you can figure out transit, you can figure out maybe if you're wanting to have a part-time job. And so by the time school rolls around, you're very familiar with the whole thing, and you can just focus on school.
Awesome. Great advice. I think it's very similar for the Vancouver campus as well. If you are planning to live in residence at either campus, there are residence options, but do make sure that you are applying to residence as soon as possible. So I would say even as soon as you apply to UBC, apply to residence. It's a pretty small fee to actually apply to residence, but that will just help you get on the list so that you potentially have a residence offer. It is kind of a bit more of a first come, first serve type of situation for upper year students. So registering for residence as soon as possible if you're able to afford that small fee that it charges. I'm not sure off the top of my head exactly what that is, but it definitely says it on the residence website. And so you can apply now for residence to be considered to start residence in September or in the summer, whenever it is that you would want to come. You're only going to be paying for residence if you get admitted to UBC, so you don't have to worry about that piece. And it'll kind of give you a peace of mind maybe that you have some options ahead of you if you want to live in residence or if you want to live off campus. There's definitely lots of like online tools and boards as well. If on the residence website is really your best option to check out, because I know that they do have a list of other ways to find off-campus housing, not just live in residence. So that's a great resource. All right, so we need to wrap up. That is it for the end of today. So Ash, to finish off, what would be your number one piece of advice for anyone that may be planning to transfer either this year or in the future to UBC Engineering?
It's hard to think of just one. I guess if you are transferring from a college, just know that UBCO is a much more self-directed course. So you're going to have to make that effort of doing the studying, making your notes, trying to find practice exam, asking your professors questions. I know at Okanagan College, there was a little bit more hand-holding where the professors gave you exactly how to succeed. At UBCO, you're expected to figure it out yourself a lot more. And obviously ask questions, email your professors, email your TAs, but you have to take that initiative. And being prepared for that from the get-go, that you have to take the initiative to do all of those things is definitely helpful, because it can be quite a shock if you're transferring from a college to UBCO. It can be very difficult to figure that out because you're so used to being given exactly the path to success.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining me, Ash. Thank you, everyone that was here today. I'll stick around for a few minutes to just reply to any of your questions. So if you're in here, you can stay in here and see those answers. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining the open house. You can check out any of these recorded sessions after the event as well. So if you missed anything, you can definitely check out the recordings from either today or the past 2 days. But a huge thank you to everyone that is here and hung out with us for any part of the last 3 days. This has been the first time we've done a kind of multi-day online event, and thank you so much for attending. We really appreciate it. If you do have questions after today, you all have my email because I have sent you all emails, but it's erin.fehr@ubc.ca. And so if you just look in your email, you will find it for sure from one of the emails I sent you about coming to this event. And you can learn more. You can send me an email with any questions that you still have after today, and I'd be happy to answer those. But again, thank you so much. And a huge thank you to Ash for getting up early on your Saturday morning to be here with me and to hang out and share your experience with these prospective students. So thank you, everyone.